Didn't expect a 30th birthday celebration to turn into a moment that left me holding my breath. I sat at the head of the table. Raising his glass, my father declared, "Your brother is successful and wealthy, unlike you." The words weren't delivered with anger. They came out proud of him, embarrassed of me. Brandon accepted the praise, his smile radiating undeserved entitlement. A few guests nodded along, buying into the image he'd spent years perfecting. The woman they still assumed was lost sat right beside them. Actually, I'd been keeping Brandon afloat financially for years. Tonight, the public performance ended. The dining room shimmered, dressed to impress. Fine glassware captured the light, sending bright reflections across the white linen tablecloth. Silver cutlery gleamed beside the china plates reserved only for special occasions. Polished wood surfaces caught the warm glow of candles arranged down the center, illuminating Brandon. Dad never missed an opportunity to display his golden child. Every fancy dinner, every proud introduction, all the glowing praise belonged to the son who had supposedly made something of himself. Relaxing in his chair, Brandon rested one arm casually across the back. His tailored jacket fit perfectly. The Rolex watch on his wrist caught the light. Image was truly everything to my brother. "Thanks, Dad." He smiled, his expression wide enough for the entire audience. "I've always worked incredibly hard for what I have." Quietly, I rested my fork on the edge of the plate. I kept my expression neutral. The careful waiting began. Dad's smile widened as he surveyed the table, needing everyone's attention for his next proclamation. "Brandon doesn't require assistance from anyone," he announced. "He's responsible, driven. He built his entire life independently." When his eyes finally reached mine, his tone shifted, cooling instantly. "Unlike Ava, who is still trying to figure things out at 30. A couple of people chuckled under their breath. Not everyone, but enough. My cheeks flushed instantly. The sound reminded me exactly where I stood in this family's rigid hierarchy. My throat tightened. I took a slow, deliberate breath, preventing myself from saying something I might regret too early. Patience and timing would serve me best tonight. Mom shifted closer to Dad, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Ray, please," she whispered. "It's her birthday." "It's the truth," he countered, brushing her off without a second glance. "There's nothing wrong with stating the facts on any occasion." Brandon lifted his wineglass toward me in a mock toast, his expression dripping with practiced sympathy. "Don't take it personally, sis. You'll find your path eventually. Some people simply bloom later than others." A familiar warmth spread into my chest. This wasn't anger. This was recognition. I'd survived this exact scene countless times. The dismissive comments, the pity looks, the constant comparisons always left me losing. But this evening would be profoundly different. "So, you are fully independent now?" I asked, keeping my voice light and conversational. Brandon snorted, exchanging an amused glance with Dad. "Obviously, I certainly don't rely on a monthly allowance just to survive." Allowance. 3 years of covering his debts, saving his reputation, preventing his carefully constructed life from shattering, all reduced to a punchline he could toss around the dinner table for laughs. Slowly, I set my napkin down. I straightened in my seat. The calculated silence stretched, lasting just long enough. "Good to know," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the table. "Therefore, I will stop sending you $7,000 every month." The room fell into a sudden sharp silence. I felt the immediate atmosphere shift. Forks stopped midair. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Every pair of eyes swiveled between my brother and me like spectators at a tennis match. Dad leaned forward, his brow deeply furrowed. "What exactly are you talking about? Brandon no longer needs my support," I calmly repeated, enunciating each word with care. "You stated so yourself. He's independent. He built everything on his own. So the transfers are ending tonight." Brandon blinked hard once, twice, as if he'd forgotten how to function. His carefully maintained composure fractured instantly. "It's not how it sounds." "It is exactly how it sounds," I said, utterly calm. Nearly 3 years of covering his rent payments, car loans, credit card bills that would spin your head, all managed by me every single month. Someone at the table's far end whispered, "Oh my God." Megan Brandon's girlfriend, a perfectly styled brunette who had spent the evening gazing at him adoringly, slowly pulled her hand away from his arm. Dad's face went from confused to thunderous. He stared at Brandon with an intensity I'd never witnessed directed at his favorite child before. "Is that truly the truth?" Brandon attempted a reassuring smile, which failed spectacularly. "Just temporary help. A short-term arrangement between siblings." "A temporary arrangement you never once mentioned," I cut in. "That's because you knew exactly how Dad would react if he found out his successful son couldn't actually pay his own bills." Dad's voice rose echoing off the fine dinnerware. "I've been telling everyone how proud I am of you colleagues, friends, business partners. I held you up as an example of hard work." Brandon's mouth moved, but nothing coherent escaped. For the first time in his life, he lacked a smooth explanation. No charming deflection appeared. Just the devastating truth sat squarely in the middle of the table like an uninvited guest. Mom's chair creaked as she shifted away from both men, her face pale with shock. Dad turned toward me, his expression cycling through emotions too quickly to track confusion, disbelief, and perhaps the faint beginning of shame. "And where did all this money originate? How could you possibly afford to give him that much?" Finally, he asked the only question he should have asked years ago. "My work," I stated simply. "The same work you've continuously dismissed and belittled since I started. The little computer thing you couldn't be bothered to understand." Dad's jaw tightened. "What exactly is it that you do?" "I built a financial analytics firm from the ground up. I design predictive investment models that companies across the entire country pay premium rates to access. My algorithms help them make decisions worth millions." The table had gone utterly still. Even the candle flames seemed to hold their light. "How much?" Dad asked, his voice now unsteady. "Tell me, how much do you actually make?" I held his gaze, absolutely unblinking. $900,000, net, last year alone." The silence that followed was total. No whispers sounded, no gasps escaped, just the complete and total absence of sound as 30 years of assumptions collapsed around them. Dad's expression shifted confusion, giving way to surprise, then something that looked like raw regret crept in at the edges. "You never told us," he said quietly. "You never wanted to know," I replied. "Every time I attempted to discuss my work, you changed the subject immediately to Brandon. Every dinner, every holiday, every phone call. You decided who I was years ago, and you never bothered to look again." Brandon stared at his hands resting uselessly on the table, likely hoping they might offer some escape from this moment. He had nothing left to say. No lie was clever enough to undo the revelation. I stood slowly, gathering the dignity they'd let me keep all these years. My chair scraped softly against the hardwood floor. "I am leaving now," I told them, my voice perfectly steady. "Enjoy the rest of the celebration." I walked toward the door, pausing just long enough at Brandon's shoulder to speak quietly. My words meant only for him. "No more pretending. No more using me to prop up your image. From now on, you'll have to earn the man you've been pretending to be." His jaw clenched hard enough that the muscle jumped beneath his skin. His eyes shifted away immediately, unable to meet mine. I walked out without waiting for anyone to follow. Outside, the winter air met me head-on, sharp and clean against my flushed skin. My breath formed small clouds that dissolved into the darkness. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from weakness, but for grounding in this new reality I had just created. For years, they had constructed a version of me that fit their expectations. The disappointing daughter, the unsuccessful sister, the family member tolerated rather than celebrated. Tonight, I replaced their fiction with an undeniable fact. The stars overhead seemed much brighter than I remembered. Perhaps I was just finally seeing them clearly. This marked the first step. I wasn't turning back. I drove home without turning on the radio. The engine hummed steadily beneath me, and street lamps passed overhead in rhythmic intervals, casting brief flashes of amber across the dashboard. Triumph wasn't the feeling I carried. The anger had already faded somewhere between the third red light and the highway on-ramp. What remained was an unfamiliar stillness, a quiet I couldn't quite name. It felt like a tightly pulled knot inside my chest had finally loosened. My apartment greeted me with familiar shadows. I shut the door and pressed my forehead against the cool wood, breathing slowly. These walls had witnessed every version of me, the woman who questioned her own worth, the one who built something from nothing while the world looked elsewhere, the sister who financed someone else's lies just to maintain a fragile peace. Tonight, a different woman crossed the threshold. She had finally spoken the word she'd been swallowing: enough. I placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter and let it ring itself into silence. The persistent screen glow illuminated the granite surface with each incoming call. Mom, Dad, Brandon, cousins. I decided they all could wait until morning. The heels came off first. Those awful things had been pinching my toes since the appetizers arrived. I pulled a blanket from the back of the couch and wrapped myself in its familiar weight. My body felt heavy, drained of some essential energy I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. My thoughts, however, moved with unusual clarity, sharper than they had been in months. Brandon's face kept surfacing. That terrible moment when his mask slipped and panic flooded his features. Dad's expression shifted from pride to confusion to devastation. The absolute silence that swallowed the dining room when I revealed the number, 900,000. Those 3 words had entirely rewritten their beliefs about me. For the first time in memory, I fell asleep without rehearsing explanations for my existence. I simply closed my eyes, knowing I owed them nothing. Morning arrived, gently sunlight slipping through the blinds in pale ribbons. I shuffled to the kitchen and started the daily mechanics. The automated hum of the espresso machine sliced through the quiet, delivering the dark necessary fuel before I was willing to engage with the world. The moment the machine signaled completion, my phone screen lit up with fresh notifications. 43 missed calls, 71 text messages. None deserved attention before the caffeine entered my bloodstream. The first sharp sip steadied my nerves enough to scroll through the chaos. Mom, please call me back. I'm worried about you. Dad, we need to discuss what happened. This isn't how a family resolves conflict. Brandon, you humiliated me in front of everyone. You need to fix this. I left the phone vibrating against the countertop. 3 sharp knocks interrupted the quiet. Impatient, urgent. Approaching the door carefully, I checked the peephole before unlocking the deadbolt. Mom stood in the hallway, wearing a coat she'd clearly thrown on without much thought. Her hair lacked its usual precision, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She studied my face intensely, like searching for damage. "May I come in?" Her voice carried a softness I rarely heard from her. I stepped aside without answering. She walked directly to the living room and perched on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped together in her lap. Her posture suggested deep uncertainty, as if she wasn't sure she belonged in my space. I remained standing near the window. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better than last night." Relief visibly loosened her shoulders. "Good. I'm glad." Silence stretched between us, broken only when she released a shaky breath. "You were right to say what you said." The admission seemed to cost her something significant. "I should have intervened years ago. Every time your father compared you to Brandon, every time he dismissed your work, I stayed quiet. That was entirely wrong." The words genuinely surprised me. Mom rarely acknowledged fault, even when evidence surrounded her. "I don't need an apology that vanishes the moment Dad walks into the room," I replied evenly. She nodded, accepting the condition. "He saw things differently after you left. The way he confronted Brandon. I've never witnessed him speak to your brother like that." My attention sharpened. "What exactly happened?" "Brandon refused to answer questions directly. He insisted you owed him the money, that it was your obligation as his sister." Her voice thinned with each sentence. "Your father asked him point blank why he'd been lying for so long. Brandon blamed you first. Then he blamed work stress. Then he blamed anything within reach." "Sounds about right." Another pause settled over us. "He's frightened," Mom continued quietly. "Terrified of losing the life he constructed, the image he sold to everyone." That's not my problem to solve. No, she met my eyes. It isn't. Mom rose from the couch, smoothing the wrinkles from her coat. Your father wants to speak with you. He's ashamed of how he's treated you, but he doesn't know how to express that. Then he'll certainly need to figure it out. A faint melancholy smile crossed her face. She walked to the door and paused with her hand on the knob. Be careful with Brandon, she said softly. He's not handling this well. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving only the ghost of her perfume and a growing awareness that last night's revelation had set something much larger in motion. I showered, dressed in clothes that felt like armor, and drove downtown to the office. The view from our floor never failed to ground me. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city's skyline, the same city that had taught me more about survival than any family dinner ever could. Faster than childhood lessons, harsher than parental lectures, infinitely more honest. Thomas, my COO, was already scribbling figures on the conference room whiteboard when I entered. He glanced up at the sound of my footsteps. You're early, he observed. Perhaps I've finally lost track of time. You're never late, I replied, settling into my usual chair. He examined my expression for a moment longer than necessary. Difficult evening. An educational one. He accepted the non-answer with a brief nod and returned to his calculations. Before we dive into the agenda, I said, where exactly did we land on Q4 margins? He circled a number on the board that made my pulse quicken. That figure accounts for marketing expenditures and full payroll, he explained. You could easily double the team tomorrow and still maintain comfortable reserves. And the audit, completed yesterday, clean approval across every single category. Something heavy lifted from my spine. Every late night, every calculated risk, every moment of doubt, all of it had built toward this. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't play favorites or make assumptions based on gender or birth order. They simply reflected reality. My phone buzzed insistently as the meeting concluded. Dad's name glowed on the screen. I answered. Ava. His voice sounded worn, aged by more than the hours since we'd last spoken. Can we talk in person? Where? I'm in your building lobby. I exhaled slowly. I'll be down in 10 minutes. He stood near the security desk, wearing his heavy winter coat, looking smaller somehow under the harsh fluorescent lights. Gray had overtaken more of his hair than I remembered noticing before. When our eyes met, his expression folded into something complicated, shame and regret, and perhaps the faint edge of pride all tangled together. I owe you far more than a simple apology, he began. I crossed my arms. Then start talking. I made assumptions about your chosen path. I believed traditional careers and corporate hierarchies represented the only legitimate measures of success. I wanted both my children to rigidly fit that mold. He paused, gathering himself. But I only ever looked at Brandon. I measured you against a standard I never questioned. That was profoundly unfair to you. I let silence do my responding. I judged your choices without understanding them, he continued. Last night forced me to see how badly I truly failed you. His eyes glistened under the overhead lights. For years I let my own misguided pride convince you that you weren't enough. You built something extraordinary while I wasn't even paying attention. His voice dropped lower. I'm sorry, Ava. I am truly sorry. The words landed one by one, settling into places that had ached for decades. Thank you, I said finally. However, reconciling with me doesn't erase what Brandon did. I won't pretend everything is fine so he can easily avoid consequences. Dad nodded slowly. I'm certainly not asking you to. He hesitated before speaking again. He's unraveling, angry. He's making threats he shouldn't be making. Genuine concern darkened his features. I wanted to warn you. Whatever he's planning, I truly don't think he's thinking clearly. That was the pivotal moment I understood something had shifted fundamentally. My father, who had spent 30 years defending Brandon, was now standing in my lobby, afraid of what his golden child might do next. Fear had never been acknowledged easily in our family. Its presence here meant something significant. That evening, exhaustion followed me through my apartment door. Not the weariness of work, but the bone-deep fatigue of finally being recognized. I cracked open a window, letting cold air sweep through the rooms. City lights glittered in the distance like earthbound constellations. My phone chimed once. Unknown number. I opened the message. You think you won something? Just wait. I stared at the screen until it dimmed to black. No signature, no identification. But desperation has a particular texture, and I recognized it immediately. Brandon had found a new way to reach me. I put the phone down and stood motionless, cold air brushing against my skin through the open window. He was definitely planning something. The question wasn't whether he would act. The question was how far he was genuinely willing to go. I closed the window deliberately, latching it with steady hands. Whatever came next, I utterly refused to be caught unprepared. This was my life now, my territory, my rules. I wasn't stepping aside for anyone. Not anymore. The clock read 7:00 a.m., but the noise started much earlier. My phone was already vibrating itself into silence against the nightstand, rattling loud enough to drag me out of a deep sleep. For one hopeful second, I thought maybe all the chaos I left behind at the dinner table had been a bad dream. Then I checked the screen, 32 notifications. More were coming in by the second. I sat up slowly, my heart not racing, but simply tired of the relentless drama. This wasn't panic. It was the bone-deep fatigue of someone who recognized the pattern. Brandon was playing his final card, the victim. I needed clarity. I walked to the kitchen and started the day's routine. The sharp heat of the boiled water waking up my senses before the caffeine even hit my bloodstream. I wasn't interested in the messages. I was interested in how I would use them. Every message asking, "Is it true?" "Call your father now," was confirmation that the narrative had flipped. I lifted the phone, not to reply, but to quietly scroll and screenshot the most frantic demands for evidence. Evidence was everything now. I let the steam warm my palms and simply stared out the window at the skyline. They wanted me to feel guilty. I chose strategic calm. Today would be the first day they were forced to learn to live with the truth. By the time I reached the office, Thomas was already buried deep in spreadsheets, the kind of work that made him look genuinely and uncomplicatedly happy. He greeted me with a small smile and nodded toward the conference room. "Wait until you see these numbers," he said, his voice quiet with anticipation. We spent the morning reviewing growth projections, vendor expansions, and customer feedback that practically begged us to introduce a subscription model. Every slide provided absolute validation that I hadn't only built something real, I had built something sustainable. Yet even in the middle of these achievements, I'd once only dreamed of my phone kept intruding, buzzing with the irritating persistence of a summer mosquito. "Brandon, answer me." "Brandon, you don't get to do this." "Dad, please call. We're worried. Worried about me." That would truly be a first. They weren't worried about my well-being. They were worried about the fallout. The kind of worry that only comes when their own comfort is directly threatened, not mine. I flipped the phone face down with a definitive snap. "Everything okay?" Thomas asked. There was no pity in his voice, only honest, quiet concern. "My brother is grieving the loss of a fantasy," I said. "He'll survive the realization." Thomas nodded once, a thoughtful expression on his face. "He'll certainly have to." I spent the afternoon finalizing our legal language for 2 major licensing deals. The necessary meticulous work anchored me when emotion tried to pull me sideways. I was signing contracts that would scale the company far beyond our early successes, irrefutable proof that discipline, not luck, or inherited wealth had gotten us here. Around 3 o'clock, my assistant Lena knocked softly and rested her head against the doorframe. "You have visitors," she whispered. The way her voice dipped made my stomach tighten immediately. "Who?" I asked, my tone flat. She cleared her throat, suddenly nervous. "Your father and brother are here." I stood, the polished wood of the chair warm beneath my hands, a silent anchor. He wanted to drag me down to the lobby. I wanted to meet them on my own terms. The tension was already a weapon, and I was absolutely going to use it. "Where are they in the lobby? Security is accompanying them." She paused, looking truly sorry for me. "Brandon looks unwell." No part of me wanted this conversation, but hiding would only give him new fuel, another complaint he could weaponize. "I'll go down now," I said. Dad's posture stiffened immediately when he saw me walk off the elevator. Brandon stood beside him, arms crossed tightly, his face pale and drawn. 2 days ago, he'd been basking in undeserved praise. Now he looked like someone who finally understood the meaning of consequences. "Ava," Dad said first. His tone wasn't angry at all. It was extremely cautious. "We came to understand what happened. But we shouldn't talk out here." "We can talk here," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly even. "I'm busy today." Brandon scoffed, the sound sharp and childish. "Busy playing CEO." That single word playing landed far sharper and crueler than he intended. I ignored him entirely, focusing only on Dad. "You had every chance to listen," I reminded him. "You dismissed me every single time I tried." Dad swallowed hard, his eyes avoiding mine. "I know. I was deeply wrong." Brandon shook his head, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Stop apologizing, Dad. She completely ambushed us." I turned my attention to him fully. "The only thing I did was stop protecting your pitiful lie." His jaw clenched hard. "You humiliated me." "I didn't," I countered, my voice absolutely calm. "You did that to yourself the moment you chose to pretend you were someone you weren't." Dad looked between us with a mixture of profound frustration and deep worry twisting his expression. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked Brandon directly, cutting through the noise. "Money again. A captive audience, someone new to blame for your choices. I want you to fix what you broke," he snapped. "People think I'm a fraud now." I blinked once, slowly. "Because you are." The red spread from his collar to his hairline. His hands were shaking violently at his sides. I'd seen him angry many times before, never this exposed, this desperate. It was the raw, toxic shock of a pampered child finally seeing the bottom. Dad cut in, his voice tight with pleading. "Ava, he's desperate. If he loses his apartment soon, that's not on me," I stated firmly. It never should have been my responsibility. The security guard took a quiet step closer, sensing the emotional tension rising to a breaking point. Brandon leaned forward, closing the distance between us. "You owe me. You owe this family your loyalty." My voice stayed cold, utterly steady. "I owe myself, finally." He said nothing more. The resulting silence spoke volumes. Dad exhaled a sound of utter defeat. "I'll call you later, alone." I nodded once, accepting the terms. Brandon's glare followed me all the way back to the elevators, like he expected it to weaken me, to make me doubt myself. It didn't. If anything, it confirmed exactly how much power I had reclaimed. The rest of the day passed in quiet productivity. Numbers made sense. People made sense when they genuinely valued the work. I didn't let 1 second of old panic back inside the walls of my mind. Close to 6, I locked up and stepped into the chilly evening air. The sun dipped quickly behind the skyline, casting long, dramatic shadows across the street, a gentle reminder that endings sometimes look exactly like beginnings, stretching out toward the future. On the walk home, I noticed Christmas lights already flickering through cafe windows. Couples laughed over late lunches. Cars honked in impatient traffic, completely uncaring. New York lived without pausing for anyone's small drama. I loved that about this city. By the time I reached my building, my shoulders felt less heavy than they had in years. I slid the key into the lock, ready for silence, but I heard movement right behind me. Brandon. He stood too close, his breath visible in the cold evening air. "We're not done with this," he hissed. I kept my hand on the door, my spine straight and unwavering. "We are absolutely done." "You think you're inherently better than us?" he accused. "No," I said quietly. "I think I finally stopped being less than you." His expression twisted into something dark and ugly. "You're ruining this family forever." "I'm saving myself," I answered simply. "If a family can't handle honesty, perhaps it was broken long before tonight." He flinched, as if physically struck, his entitlement momentarily shattered. Then he spat. "You'll regret this choice." He walked quickly away, disappearing around the corner. I waited until he was completely gone before unlocking the door and stepping into safety. Home wasn't just walls tonight. It was tangible proof that I had built a life strong enough to withstand the ones trying so desperately to tear it down. I took a long restorative shower, letting the water wash off the unpleasant residue of the day's confrontation. When I finally sat in bed, wrapped snugly in warm blankets, I checked the Forbes email again. The journalist had followed up their words, echoing my newfound sense of self. Looking forward to highlighting your journey. You're paving the way for so many women to believe in their potential. One moment in time, one sentence my dad never spoke, one truth no one in the world could undo. I typed back a brief, definitive response. Thank you. My story is just beginning. I put the phone down, lights off, heart steady. For the first time in years, I didn't waste a single moment wondering whether I was enough. I wondered instead how much higher I could climb now that I wasn't dragging someone else's enormous burden behind me. The first sign appeared before sunrise. My phone lit up beside the bed, vibrating aggressively across the nightstand. I tried to ignore it initially, hoping the noise would cease. Messages kept arriving, however, one right after another. When the alert tone finally broke through my half-sleep, I forced myself upright and grabbed the phone. Brandon had posted again. This wasn't just a vague complaint or a bitter insinuation. He made it profoundly personal this time. My sister steals from her own family. Pray you never meet someone like her. #fraud. #false success. #exposed. Soon. Hundreds of comments poured beneath it. Strangers guessed wildly. His friends piled on the insults. People who knew absolutely nothing about me called me greedy, selfish, and dangerous. I threw the covers back and stood barefoot on the cold floor. Anger didn't strike me first. Sadness did. A heavy, quiet kind settled behind my ribs. Years were spent protecting him. Now he weaponized every dollar I provided. I walked to the kitchen. Strategy first. The machine burbled to life. The sharp heat of the mug helped. Nothing about this morning felt ordinary. Checking my phone again, I saw the storm had doubled in intensity. Brandon tagged relatives. He tagged high school acquaintances. He tagged Dad. Dad hadn't responded yet. Seeing his name attached to the mess made my stomach turn. My career thrived on clarity, on verifiable truth, on numbers that always added up. Brandon lived entirely in implication. The implication was much louder online. I took a slow breath and repeated quietly, facts win eventually. Eventually. But right now, lies were spreading much faster. At the office, Lena met me with an anxious look. You should prepare yourself, she warned softly. There's significantly more. She led me to my desk. A padded envelope lay waiting, addressed in sloppy handwriting. No return label. My pulse ticked faster. I sliced the top open and slid out a stack of printed screenshots, private messages where Brandon begged for money. Each one was annotated in red ink to twist the meaning. See how she manipulated me. She threatened me into silence. Proof she used me financially. None of that was true. But the narrative was cleverly designed to mimic real abuse. Anyone quickly skimming would assume I was the predator. There was one final page, a draft lawsuit he claimed he was filing. It accused me of financial exploitation. My throat tightened immediately. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was actively planning to destroy me publicly. I set the papers down with utmost care. Thomas appeared at my doorway as if summoned by the tension. You received one too, he asked. One what? He held up his own identical envelope. He sent these to everyone who knows you, he said quietly. Vendors, partners, investors, journalists. My skin prickled. A chill crawled along my shoulders. He wants to cut you off from your success. Thomas continued. If you lose credibility, the business inevitably suffers. That was the part Brandon understood perfectly. Power truly lived in reputation. Lisa joined through video call within the hour. Her tone allowed no room for doubt. We're filing a harassment report immediately. A restraining order is the next step. Do not contact him directly. Every communication must now go through me. I nodded. Thomas stood behind me, arms folded, support carved into his stance. Lisa added, also stop downplaying this threat. It's serious. You are currently being stalked digitally and physically. The room suddenly felt smaller. Okay, I said. I'll follow your professional lead. Her expression softened just enough to show empathy beneath the strategy. Good. Because this isn't merely about siblings anymore, it's fundamentally about safety. I buried myself in work after the call. Focusing on financial models steadied me. Numbers didn't twist themselves into lies. They didn't seek revenge. By afternoon, I desperately needed air. I walked the block around the building, letting the city noise fill my head instead of Brandon's voice. A couple pushed a stroller past me, playfully arguing about lunch plans. Students rushed toward the subway entrance, laughing over earbuds and inside jokes. Everyone else's life remained uncomplicated, utterly untouched by my brother's unraveling. The contrast felt profoundly surreal. On the way back, a man smoking near the corner eyed me strangely. Not threatening, just curious. When our eyes met, he looked away quickly, almost like he recognized me. Fame wasn't what I wanted at all. Recognition inevitably came with its own shadows. When I returned, security waited for me in the lobby. "There's someone here asking for you," the guard said. "He absolutely refuses to leave." Brandon. I didn't need to see him to know it was him. "I'm not engaging with him," I told the guard. "Please escort him outside immediately." The guard nodded and disappeared toward the seating area. Moments later, Brandon's voice rang out over the hum of the lobby, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She doesn't get to hide. She stole absolutely everything from me." A couple of employees paused mid-step, eyes widening. Security guided him toward the exit. He resisted, yelling even louder. "You're going to pay for this. You think money makes you better. You can't erase me." The door finally swallowed his voice. Quiet returned, but not peace. Thomas stepped to my side. He crossed the line. Again. I hated how my hands trembled. I shoved them into my pockets so no one noticed. "He believes this performance still works on me," words sharp as truth. Thomas shook his head. "Only if you play the role he assigned." Perhaps those were the exact same thing for him. Back in my office, I closed the blinds. The bright skyline suddenly felt like a spotlight I didn't ask for. I stared at my reflection in the window, a woman holding her ground, but fraying visibly at the edges. How had the person I trusted as a child become the threat I feared most as an adult? I didn't get the luxury of unraveling. Not with employees counting on me. Not with partners expecting leadership. Not while my brother wagered my silence against his lies. So I chose resolve. I grabbed the framed screenshot he sent earlier and placed it face down. It no longer deserved a place in my line of sight. That evening I returned home before full dark. Snow flurries drifted lazily from the sky, settling on my coat shoulders like dust from a shaken world. I checked behind me twice before entering the building. Inside the elevator, the floor numbers blinked upward too slowly. When I stepped out onto my floor, the hallway lights flickered. And then I saw it. A white envelope slipped beneath my apartment door. No name, no writing at all. I knew exactly who sent it. My fingers hesitated before picking it up. Inside, a photo of me leaving the office earlier that afternoon. My face was turned just slightly toward the camera, unaware, exposed. Beneath it, one sentence I'm watching. My breath hitched instantly. I dropped the envelope like it burned my skin. Brandon wasn't only trying to ruin me online, he wanted to terrify me. He wanted me completely controlled. I locked the deadbolt and pulled the curtains closed. Then with shaking hands, I called Lisa. Her voice sharpened instantly. "I'm filing the restraining order tonight. Tomorrow we will bring in security personnel. Do not be alone with him. And keep absolutely every piece of evidence." After I hung up, the silence in my apartment felt wrong, too dense, too alert. I wrapped myself in a blanket on the couch because the thought of sleeping in my bedroom felt profoundly unsafe. The TV flickered with a muted documentary colors flashing across the room. My mind replayed every single warning sign I'd ignored, every time I said he'd never go that far. But he had gone that far, and he would go further still if I didn't stop him immediately. I curled my knees up to my chest and whispered the truth I had avoided admitting. He is genuinely dangerous. No justification left. No excuses to protect him remained. Not anymore. Brandon didn't want reconciliation. He wanted total destruction. I was done pretending he deserved forgiveness. The clock read 7:00 a.m., but the noise started much earlier. My phone was already vibrating itself into silence against the nightstand, rattling loud enough to drag me out of a deep sleep. For one hopeful second, I thought maybe all the chaos I left behind at the dinner table had been a bad dream. Then I checked the screen, 32 notifications. More were coming in by the second. I sat up slowly, my heart not racing but simply tired of the relentless drama. This wasn't panic. It was the bone-deep fatigue of someone who recognized the pattern. Brandon was playing his final card, the victim. I needed clarity. I walked to the kitchen and started the day's routine, the sharp heat of the boiled water, waking up my senses before the caffeine even hit my bloodstream. I wasn't interested in the messages. I was interested in how I would use them. Every message asking, "Is it true? Call your father now," was confirmation that the narrative had flipped. I lifted the phone not to reply, but to quietly scroll and screenshot the most frantic demands for evidence. Evidence was everything now. I let the steam warm my palms and simply stared out the window at the skyline. They wanted me to feel guilty. I chose strategic calm. Today would be the first day they were forced to learn to live with the truth. By the time I reached the office, Thomas was already buried deep in spreadsheets, the kind of work that made him look genuinely and uncomplicatedly happy. He greeted me with a small smile and nodded toward the conference room. "Wait until you see these numbers," he said, his voice quiet with anticipation. We spent the morning reviewing growth projections, vendor expansions, and customer feedback that practically begged us to introduce a subscription model. Every slide provided absolute validation that I hadn't only built something real, I had built something sustainable. Yet even in the middle of these achievements, I'd once only dreamed of my phone kept intruding, buzzing with the irritating persistence of a summer mosquito. "Brandon, answer me." "Brandon, you don't get to do this." "Dad, please call. We're worried about me." That would truly be a first. They weren't worried about my well-being. They were worried about the fallout, the kind of worry that only comes when their own comfort is directly threatened, not mine. I flipped the phone face down with a definitive snap. "Everything okay?" Thomas asked. There was no pity in his voice, only honest, quiet concern. "My brother is grieving the loss of a fantasy," I said. "He'll survive the realization." Thomas nodded once, a thoughtful expression on his face. "He'll certainly have to." I spent the afternoon finalizing our legal language for 2 major licensing deals. The necessary meticulous work anchored me when emotion tried to pull me sideways. I was signing contracts that would scale the company far beyond our early successes, irrefutable proof that discipline, not luck or inherited wealth, had gotten us here. Around 3 o'clock, my assistant Lena knocked softly and rested her head against the doorframe. "You have visitors?" she whispered. The way her voice dipped made my stomach tighten immediately. "Who?" I asked, my tone flat. She cleared her throat, suddenly nervous. "Your father and brother are here." I stood the polished wood of the chair warm beneath my hands, a silent anchor. He wanted to drag me down to the lobby. I wanted to meet them on my own terms. The tension was already a weapon, and I was absolutely going to use it. "Where are they?" "In the lobby. Security is accompanying them." She paused, looking truly sorry for me. "Brandon looks unwell." No part of me wanted this conversation, but hiding would only give him new fuel, another complaint he could weaponize. "I'll go down now," I said. Dad's posture stiffened immediately when he saw me walk off the elevator. Brandon stood beside him, arms crossed tightly, his face pale and drawn. 2 days ago, he'd been basking in undeserved praise. Now he looked like someone who finally understood the meaning of consequences. "Ava," Dad said first. His tone wasn't angry at all, it was extremely cautious. "We came to understand what happened, but we shouldn't talk out here. We can talk here," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly even. "I'm busy today." Brandon scoffed, the sound sharp and childish. "Busy playing CEO." That single word "playing" landed far sharper and crueler than he intended. I ignored him entirely, focusing only on Dad. "You had every chance to listen," I reminded him. "You dismissed me every single time I tried." Dad swallowed hard, his eyes avoiding mine. "I know. I was deeply wrong." Brandon shook his head, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Stop apologizing, Dad. She completely ambushed us. I turned my attention to him fully. The only thing I did was stop protecting your pitiful lie. His jaw clenched hard. You humiliated me. I countered, my voice absolutely calm. You did that to yourself the moment you chose to pretend you were someone you weren't. Dad looked between us with a mixture of profound frustration and deep worry twisting his expression. What exactly do you want from me? I asked Brandon, directly cutting through the noise. Money again. A captive audience. Someone new to blame for your choices. I want you to fix what you broke, he snapped. People think I'm a fraud now. I blinked once. Slowly. Because you are. The red spread from his collar to his hairline. His hands were shaking violently at his sides. I'd seen him angry many times before, never this exposed, this desperate. It was the raw, toxic shock of a pampered child finally seeing the bottom. Dad cut in, his voice tight with pleading. Ava, he's desperate. If he loses his apartment soon, that's not on me, I stated firmly. It never should have been my responsibility. The security guard took a quiet step closer, sensing the emotional tension rising to a breaking point. Brandon leaned forward, closing the distance between us. You owe me. You owe this family your loyalty. My voice stayed cold, utterly steady. I owe myself finally. He said nothing more. The resulting silence spoke volumes. Dad exhaled a sound of utter defeat. I'll call you later. Alone. I nodded once, accepting the terms. Brandon's glare followed me all the way back to the elevators, like he expected it to weaken me, to make me doubt myself. It didn't. If anything, it confirmed exactly how much power I had reclaimed. The rest of the day passed in quiet productivity. Numbers made sense. People made sense when they genuinely valued the work. I didn't let 1 second of old panic back inside the walls of my mind. Close to 6, I locked up and stepped into the chilly evening air. The sun dipped quickly behind the skyline, casting long, dramatic shadows across the street, a gentle reminder that endings sometimes look exactly like beginnings, stretching out toward the future. On the walk home, I noticed Christmas lights already flickering through cafe windows. Couples laughed over late lunches. Cars honked in impatient traffic, completely uncaring. New York lived without pausing for anyone's small drama. I loved that about this city. By the time I reached my building, my shoulders felt less heavy than they had in years. I slid the key into the lock, ready for silence, but I heard movement right behind me. Brandon. He stood too close, his breath visible in the cold evening air. We're not done with this, he hissed. I kept my hand on the door, my spine straight and unwavering. We are absolutely done. You think you're inherently better than us? He accused. No, I said quietly. I think I finally stopped being less than you. His expression twisted into something dark and ugly. You're ruining this family forever. I'm saving myself, I answered simply. If a family can't handle honesty, perhaps it was broken long before tonight. He flinched, as if physically struck, his entitlement momentarily shattered. Then he spat, You'll regret this choice. He walked quickly away, disappearing around the corner. I waited until he was completely gone before unlocking the door and stepping into safety. Home wasn't just walls tonight. It was tangible proof that I had built a life strong enough to withstand the ones trying so desperately to tear it down. I took a long restorative shower, letting the water wash off the unpleasant residue of the day's confrontation. When I finally sat in bed, wrapped snugly in warm blankets, I checked the Forbes email again. The journalist had followed up their words, echoing my newfound sense of self. Looking forward to highlighting your journey. You're paving the way for so many women to believe in their potential. One moment in time, one sentence my dad never spoke, one truth no one in the world could undo. I typed back a brief, definitive response. Thank you. My story is just beginning. I put the phone down, lights off, heart steady. For the first time in years, I didn't waste a single moment wondering whether I was enough. I wondered instead how much higher I could climb now that I wasn't dragging someone else's enormous burden behind me. My phone shook violently against the nightstand before the sun even reached the windows. Missed calls flooded the screen, messages stacked on top of each other, notifications pulsed like a heartbeat I couldn't regulate. A silent wish begged for good news. Reality immediately denied it. Brandon decided to fight dirty again. Edited screenshots twisted familiar bank records into fresh accusations. Audio clips spliced into false threats distorted my voice into something cold and cruel. A crowd of strangers got fed a story where he was crushed by my greed while I gloated above him. People believed him without hesitation or question. Their words cut deep, scammer disguised as family. Wealth doesn't erase deep cruelty. Climbers always push someone else down. Someone should finally put her in her place. Lies spread significantly faster than honesty ever could. A long breath escaped through tightened lungs. I put the phone on the mattress to keep the anxiety from climbing further. The office buzzed with its normal morning rhythm, yet an unease curved beneath every greeting directed my way. Smiles appeared gentle, but fear flickered clearly behind them. Thomas arrived soon after I did, eyes shadowed with worry. "Ava, it's absolutely everywhere now," he murmured. He is aggressively trying to erase the documented truth. No further explanation was needed. Anyone online could instantly see the wildfire growing. The war room turned into our command center immediately. Screens plastered with timelines of his posts and impact charts replaced yesterday's planning agendas. Conversations sharpened into rapid, focused strategies. Lena pointed to trending terms lighting up in red. A hashtag calling you financially abusive is climbing dangerously fast. Those two words, financial abuse, carried a weight that could crush reputations instantly. Brandon knew exactly which blow would land hardest. My stomach knotted uncomfortably. Facts became the only lifeline remaining. "We respond solely with documented truth," I said. "No emotional battles, just irrefutable proof." Thomas stood firm. "Everything is archived, every request he made, every emergency he dragged you into. We put light where he's manufacturing darkness." I forced a nod of agreement. "And our investors' position?" "They aren't flinching at all," he answered. "What you've built holds much more substance than his mere tantrum." Even reassurance felt fragile under public hostility. Lisa joined the video call. Her expression held zero fear. "The restraining order is in progress right now, and when the damage becomes fully measurable, we immediately move on to the defamation lawsuit." She paused. "You are fully allowed to protect yourself without apology to anyone." Her conviction decisively steadied the fraying edges inside me. News vans returned before evening. Reporters fought for the closest vantage point outside the glass doors. They no longer sought simple information, they aggressively hunted spectacle. Voices clashed over one another. "Did you force payments out of him repeatedly? Why were you so secretive about your wealth? Are you responsible for his public decline? What do you say to the families of real victims?" Each question embedded deeper than the last. Camera flashes hammered my senses. Silence carried me through the crowd with a straight spine. Engagement would only validate their insatiable appetite. Inside the building, the air thickened around me. My office chair received the weight I could no longer hold upright. Anger simmered deeply without explosion. Sharpness could wait patiently. Control mattered much more now. Brandon wanted chaos. I utterly refused to hand it to him. A knock interrupted the simmering stillness. My father stood in the doorway. Exhaustion hollowed the lines of his face. He looked significantly older than he had 3 nights earlier. "We should speak privately," he said. The door clicked shut behind him. His gaze traveled across the room, the accolades, the monitors full of real results, the quiet professionalism, everything he once so easily dismissed. "This is undeniably real," he whispered. Admiration tangled visibly with disbelief. "It always was, Dad," I answered. He lowered himself into a chair, as though gravity had suddenly doubled its effect. "Brandon insists you're actively tearing him down because you can't stand his success." The words barely left his mouth before I stopped myself from laughing bitterly. He doesn't have any success left to tear down. Dad's silence admitted knowledge he truly didn't want to possess. The truth continued pouring forward. I helped him until he used my support to pretend he never needed anyone. Then I simply stopped the support. That's the entire unvarnished story. Dad pressed fingers to his brow. "I feel completely lost. He used to be so confident and sure of himself. He still is sure of himself," I said gently. "Just about a total lie." A flicker of hurt crossed his eyes. "He's my son, Ava, and I'm your daughter, Ray," I replied, my voice low and steady. The reminder hit harder than any direct accusation. His shoulders visibly drooped. I refused to see what was happening to you. A pause followed, weighted and sincere. I simply didn't want to see it. He stood not quite steady. I'll try to reach him again. I just don't know if I'll succeed this time. He isn't ready to hear anything yet, I said. Not while he's still desperately building a world where he's the only one wronged. He hesitated at the door. If you need someone here, I am available. A late effort, yet still something real, finally offered. After he left, 10 seconds became the limit I allowed myself to feel everything: disappointment, resentment, and a thin thread of relief. Work resumed right after the timer ended. Outside, early darkness touched the city. Snow settled in delicate layers over sidewalks and roofs, pretending to quiet all conflict. Members of my team resisted leaving. I insisted they go home. Dedication shouldn't have to become self-sacrifice. Once alone, I checked the locks twice. My phone screen continued to mirror strangers' manufactured anger. Threats replaced arguments. Doubt smothered logic. Accusations claimed imaginary victory. Fear trembled just under the skin, fear fueled by betrayal and exposure, but resolve grew faster than it. I prepared files that proved every detail. Organized timelines, collected receipts, truth transformed into structure armor against manipulation. Closing the laptop drained my energy in one clean sweep. The elevator hummed on the descent, every floor feeling like another warning. Winter air bit through my coat when the lobby doors opened. Shadows stretched too far beneath streetlights. Instinct urged quicker, more urgent steps. A slow engine grumbled behind me. The wrong kind of slow. My breath caught in my throat. The sedan with darkened windows crawled forward. No headlights illuminated its path. The sound of tires through soft snow amplified my dread. Then chaos snapped the tension. Another vehicle surged forward, horn blaring loudly, forcing the first car to speed away instantly. Its taillights vanished in seconds. Cold air seared my lungs as I stood momentarily frozen in place. My pulse thrashed violently. A message vibrated in my hand before movement returned. Thomas. Are you all right, Thomas? I think he only intended to scare you away. He had followed without asking. Discomfort and gratitude collided simultaneously. I chose simplicity. I'm okay. It wasn't true, of course, but it decisively ended the conversation. I locked the deadbolt the moment I reached my apartment. Curtains drawn, windows checked. Every sound outside felt too close now. Movement wouldn't stop pacing from kitchen to living room and back until exhaustion finally forced me onto the couch. A blanket wrapped around my shoulders helped hold my bones together. Steady breathing came slowly, every inhale a small victory against fear. The phone lit again. Unknown number. A chill sliced through the temporary calm. You think you're safe, you're not. A photo followed immediately. My building's entrance, taken only minutes ago. Terror jolted every nerve awake. I put the phone down instantly. Brandon wasn't only trying to ruin me online. He wanted to terrify me. He wanted me completely controlled. I checked the locks one final time. Then, with a newfound steadiness, I called Lisa. Her voice sharpened instantly. I'm filing the restraining order tonight. Tomorrow we will bring in security personnel. Do not be alone with him, and keep absolutely every piece of evidence. After I hung up, the silence in my apartment felt wrong, too dense, too alert. I whispered the truth I had avoided admitting. He is genuinely dangerous. I was done pretending he deserved forgiveness. The headlines continued multiplying like a storm front, thickening in every direction. Early morning sunlight cut through my blinds, but clarity refused to follow immediately. A quick scroll through social media revealed more chaos erupting overnight. Brandon had spent those hours churning out every possible lie, convincing thousands that betrayal flowed through my veins. My chest tightened with each swipe of the screen. Avoiding the screen seemed like the only way to genuinely breathe. Water boiled in the background while I gathered my thoughts. Energy tasted bitter, even in silence. A clear plan needed to exist. Floating helplessly in his narrative would only let him drag me deeper into his version of events. Determination steadied my hands. The mug warmed my palms. Momentum mattered fundamentally today. At the office, a quiet shift had taken root. Coworkers did not whisper, but their obvious restraint created a vacuum that spoke louder than any rumors ever could. They feared saying the wrong thing, so nobody said much at all. Thomas stepped out of his workspace before I reached my door. Concern lingered in the way he scanned me. "You are here early," he said, clearly relieved. "Of course I am here. He desperately wants me rattled." "And are you rattled at all? I am simply angry," I answered. The directness surprised him, but honesty sealed itself to every word. Our conference room looked more like a crisis newsroom than a typical workspace. Screens displayed graphs tracking the spread of accusations. A whiteboard filled with dates and screenshots stood across from stacks of legal documents. Lisa joined us in person this time. She placed her phone on the table, then spoke without delay. "We filed the restraining order officially today. Evidence is abundant. The judge should grant protection quickly." Relief flickered inside me instantly. "What about the defamation case? That requires strategic patience," she said. "He is publicly imploding. The more desperate he becomes, the easier our case will ultimately be." The statement felt deeply true. His posts had grown more frantic, his claims more outlandish. A careful man would have paused by now. Brandon only accelerated his downfall. Thomas switched screens. "We also have a significant opportunity now," he said. "A few reputable outlets want to hear your side of the story." Visibility threatened me, but disappearing would immediately look like guilt. "What if speaking out only fuels the fire?" I asked. "They are already burning the entire forest," Thomas replied. "Better to stop them from lighting the next tree down." The decision formed quickly in my mind. Schedule interviews only with the journalists we trust. Not tabloids. Nobody who profits purely from conflict. Lisa nodded crisply. We shaped the message carefully. Calm, confidence, factual. Action brought strength instantly. Standing still had only fed my anxiety. Moving decisively meant reclaiming control. Afternoon came fast. I filmed a statement with our communications team. The backdrop was neutral. My expression stayed composed. A short script laid out truth with precision. Brandon asked repeatedly for financial help. I provided it without conditions attached. He built a false image using that very support. Stopping the payments led him to retaliate with persistent lies. One clear paragraph. There is nothing left inside me that seeks revenge through shouting or cruelty. My choices now come entirely from clarity, not rage. I know exactly who I am, and that singular knowledge is finally enough. Honesty did not require theatrics whatsoever. During playback, I watched my own face reflect a resilience I had forgotten belonged to me. "We will release this tonight at 6, Thomas said. "Good," I confirmed. "Let him be the only one yelling into the void." A beep from the door signaled a visitor. Mom entered clutching her purse as though she feared dropping her grip on reality. She closed the distance slowly, searching for words she had never needed before. "I saw what he posted online," she whispered. My breath stilled. "And what do you think I know, Brandon?" she admitted plainly. "He lies compulsively when he feels cornered." The confession landed with rare clarity. Mom had always avoided confronting uncomfortable truths. Seeing her stand with reality now carved a new ache inside me. "He crossed a permanent line," I stated. "I should have stopped him years earlier," she replied, voice trembling slightly. "I worried too much about protecting his fragile pride, and not nearly enough about protecting you." The apology I waited decades to hear finally hovered between us. She reached for my hand and held it tight. "He is genuinely scared," she continued. "He knows the life he pretended to have is utterly gone." Pity tried forming, but memory firmly held it back. "Fear does not excuse blatant cruelty." "No," she said, "it does not. Which is precisely why you need to keep standing exactly where you are now. Do not shrink back." I blinked away the warmth gathering behind my eyes. Encouragement rarely came from her. This moment mattered more than she realized. Mom squeezed once more before stepping away. "Call me tonight. I want to check on you personally." Her departure left a mix of comfort and disbelief trailing behind. Evening settled in. Snow fell again, forming layers that covered footprints before anyone could follow them. Streetlights glowed like beacons in the dusk. Our media team gathered in the main room. With one final review, the video statement went live instantly. Thomas watched engagement metrics climb immediately. "People are responding differently this time," he said, surprised. "They sound open to actually listening." Skepticism remained necessary, though progress tasted welcome. Outside the windows, headlights appeared in front of the building. Cameras mounted on shoulders turned toward the entrance. Reporters waited for movement. They wanted fresh drama. Instead of feeding their appetite, I stayed upstairs. The safety team insisted on escorting me home tonight. After last night's scare, no argument could possibly rebut them. The drive wound through quiet streets. Snow muffled the city's usual noise. We arrived without incident, yet anxiety still clenched every muscle. My apartment felt heavier than usual. Silence pressed in from all directions. I checked the deadbolt. The couch caught my weight before panic could rise. The day had felt like a year. Exhaustion blurred the edges of furniture. Thoughts slowed only out of necessity. A soft knock tapped against my door. I froze instantly. Another knock came. Quiet. Persistent. I gathered the little courage left over and approached. A glance through the peephole showed a familiar silhouette. Thomas stood with his hands tucked in his pockets, snow dusting his shoulders. Opening the door brought cold air inside. "Is something gravely wrong?" I asked. "I wanted to make absolutely sure you made it through the night as well as the day," he said. "You should not be alone right now." He stepped inside only after I invited him. The warmth returned once the door shut firmly. Concern softened his features. "You held the world's judgment with incredible grace today," he said. "You should allow yourself small moments of support." Strength did not forbid human connection. Granting myself that recognition felt foreign but necessary. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Stillness carried comfort when shared. I leaned back into the cushions, breathing fully again for the first time in days. "When did this suddenly become your responsibility?" I asked him. "Protecting me." He considered the question carefully. "Maybe the moment he decided to destroy you publicly. Perhaps earlier when I saw how much you were holding alone." His sincerity removed any need for me to respond. Gratitude existed quietly in the space. The night grew deeper while we talked about ordinary, mundane things. No strategy was discussed. No fear was entertained. Just two people choosing to be human for a while. At one point, he caught me staring too long. A faint smile crossed his mouth, warming something inside me that had grown cold. He did not move closer. He did not make assumptions about me. Respect guided every breath he took near me. Eventually, fatigue demanded rest. I walked him to the door. "Thank you, Thomas," I said. "You do not need to thank me at all," he replied. "Just keep moving forward." The door closed softly. I stood there for a moment, absorbing the echoes of steady loyalty. This battle had already taken more from me than I ever imagined possible, yet tonight offered proof I was not fighting alone anymore. I went to bed knowing I was not done fighting yet. Morning light showed up earlier than my will to open my eyes, but responsibility forced movement. Calm would not arrive on its own. I had to manufacture it myself. A splash of cold water immediately steadied my pulse. Sleep had left behind a storm of unfinished adrenaline. My office waited. Momentum demanded presence. The walk there carried a sharpness that kept me aware of every footstep, every unfamiliar sound behind me. The city felt suddenly like it had watchful eyes. Security nodded when I entered the building. Their presence brought a small comfort, though comfort was not the goal today. Accountability was. Thomas and Lena stood near the elevators, whispering over a phone. When they noticed me, the conversation stopped instantly. Worried glances replaced their words. "What is it now?" I asked. Thomas angled the screen toward me. Brandon had released another post. A shaky video recorded in some parking lot, lit only by flickering lights. His face appeared pale and frantic. "They utterly ruined my life," he choked out. "My sister took everything from me. She made sure I could not survive without her money. Now she has turned everyone against me. I truly do not know how much longer I can fight this." His performance desperately sought pity. Tears glimmered, but not enough to be truly convincing. The shift from arrogance to desperation felt completely theatrical. Lena exhaled sharply. He wants sympathy desperately. He hopes if he looks broken, people will forget who he has hurt. He is clearly not the victim here, Thomas muttered. No, I agreed. He is simply terrified now. The truth of that stung in a complicated way. Fear made him fundamentally dangerous because it erased whatever boundaries he still had. Inside the conference room, Lisa stood with a printed document ready for my signature. A judge reviewed all our evidence. You now have a legally binding temporary restraining order. The words offered the first real sense of tangible protection. Relief hit like warmth spreading slowly through frozen muscle. How soon will this take effect officially? It already has taken effect, she answered. He cannot contact you directly, indirectly, or through third parties. Violations will lead to immediate criminal consequences. A legal line had finally been decisively drawn. Brandon could still scream online, but proximity now had legal teeth. Thomas passed me a folder. Investor concerns are stabilizing rapidly. Your statement worked perfectly. They are unequivocally with you now. Strength returned. Standing on solid ground felt unfamiliar after days of sinking sand. Lisa tapped her pen thoughtfully. We should anticipate intense backlash. He may escalate further because he sees you regaining control. He already escalated to the maximum, I whispered. She nodded once. Then we prepare meticulously for the next wave. Later that afternoon, the utterly unexpected happened. My phone rang loudly. His name did not appear, but the number was painfully familiar nonetheless. My hand hovered above the screen. The restraining order forbade contact. Answering could significantly complicate everything. Letting the call ring felt like a missed chance to hear the truth behind the chaos. The screen stopped vibrating instantly. A voicemail icon replaced the call and dug straight into my chest. Curiosity overruled hesitation entirely. His voice played through anxious static. You destroyed me completely, he said. You took the only chance I had left. I cannot go anywhere without someone calling me a liar. You got what you wanted, Ava. Can you be happy now? Not a hint of remorse, not a single drop of honesty. Another message followed seconds later. Rage now controlled his heavy breathing. You think you won, Ava? I am absolutely not finished. I will not let you pretend you are inherently better than me. You owe me everything. This is your fault. A third message arrived. The tone shifted again, darker, quieter. You will pay dearly for turning everyone against me. The recording abruptly ended. His threat lingered heavily in the air. I deleted none of them. Evidence mattered far too much now. My heart raced violently. Silence filled the room again, but now it echoed with possibility and unmistakable warning. The hours crawled by as the sun lowered behind the skyline. I stayed later than usual, too rattled to leave alone. Reports and emails served as necessary distractions. Thomas finally entered my office. He placed a steaming cup of tea beside the keyboard. Drink this, he said. No request. A quiet order wrapped in concern. The first sip loosened the tension in my shoulders immediately. Warmth made the world less hostile for a moment. His gaze landed on the stack of transcripts from Brandon's recordings. He thinks the entire world owes him success effortlessly. He thinks I owe him everything I have. I corrected him. Thomas leaned against the doorframe. You built something truly powerful and unique. He cannot tolerate knowing he never built anything at all himself. Self-awareness remained fundamentally distant from Brandon. Fragile egos rarely welcomed mirrors. Thomas's expression hardened slightly. He crossed a criminal line today. That specific voicemail is proof of a crime. Justice felt closer than ever, although justice tasted metallic, not soothing. We will certainly use it, I said. You will ultimately win this, he answered with certainty. Confidence sat well on his voice. Night swallowed the city completely. My ride home waited downstairs with security escorting me to the vehicle. Street lights blurred past the windows. The unease from earlier had not disappeared completely. Danger remained unpredictable and potent. When we pulled up to my building, everything looked normal enough. Snow glimmering beneath moonlight neighbors' windows, glowing with evening routines. Safety still required extreme vigilance. I checked every angle before stepping out. The lobby welcomed us with heat and the faint scent of pine from decorative garlands. I almost relaxed fully. The elevator dinged. The The ride upward lasted only seconds, but stretched like a silent test of courage. Home greeted me with total stillness. I locked the deadbolt with finality behind me, shoes tossed near the door, the jacket hung on its hook. The motions formed a ritual of pretending life was ordinary. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. My lungs tightened instantly. This time the text held no disguises whatsoever. "You think the law will protect you forever? I can get around anything you build." My hands went cold. Fear had become a living, breathing thing in the room. I put the phone down instantly, refusing to look at it again until my head cleared completely. Every instinct urged stronger, more decisive action. Defensive measures were clearly not enough now. Protection required strategic offense. He expected complete panic. Instead, I reached for the files containing every lie, every transfer, every humiliating detail he begged me to hide. Truth had power when organized properly. A sense of solid purpose replaced the earlier dread. If he insisted on setting fires, I would drown his flames in irrefutable evidence. No hesitation remained now. Before sleeping, I stood near the window and watched snowflakes drift under the street lamps. Peace lived somewhere beyond this moment. Patience would bring it closer every day. Tonight, power felt entirely different. It no longer came from silence or mere endurance. It came entirely from choice. Strength flowed not from hiding the truth, but from expertly using it. I closed the curtains, secured the locks one more time, and whispered a vow only I needed to hear. Your persistent lies will not survive the truth. I went to bed, knowing I would meet the future, fully ready. Dawn arrived without gentleness. It sliced through my room like a forceful reminder that forward was the only direction left for me. I forced myself out of bed and moved carefully, conscious of every sound around me. A new day meant another round, but the fear that once controlled me had begun to lose its command. Shadows in the hallway no longer dictated my pace at all. Determination dictated it instead. My phone displayed multiple news alerts. Reporters had discovered Brandon's most recent meltdown. Photographs captured him stumbling out of a late-night bar, eyes glassy, anger wild. He shoved a camera and shouted incoherently at strangers. The internet turned on him quicker than wildfire jumps brush. He once viewed attention as currency. Now it burned everything he touched. The office looked brighter than usual, though no overhead lights had changed. Progress breathed through the air. Employees resumed conversations at a normal volume. Screens reflected analytics trending powerfully in my favor. Redemption had started reshaping the public narrative. Thomas held a printed summary of comments. Your response yesterday significantly shifted momentum. People who doubted you openly are now apologizing. Apologies were certainly nice to receive. Accountability mattered far more now. He continued, investors have emailed again. They want to schedule meetings specifically about expansion. They are genuinely impressed by how you handled everything so calmly. Winning back respect always carried a sharper edge when someone first stole it. Lisa entered behind him, coat half-buttoned from the cold outside. She closed the door quietly before delivering another update. Brandon violated the restraining order again. Twice. Last night's messages were flagged automatically. A judge will see this new evidence today. Consequences would finally pay him a long overdue visit. Lisa approached the table. There is more legal development. His bank sent a notice to the court. He is deeply overdrawn again. His landlord has initiated eviction proceedings. His car payments are months behind schedule. His collapsing facade no longer had anywhere left to hide. Every lie he posted made him look more unstable, she added with finality. Pain did not arrive in my chest. Pity did not surface easily. All I felt was the solid presence of truth standing beside me. My hands no longer shook at all. Hours turned busy and productive. Media teams prepared statements for upcoming interviews. My product development team requested decisions on new launches. Customers kept buying our services. Life outside the drama continued moving, reminding me the world never shrinks to one person's destruction unless I actively let it. When lunch rolled around, Thomas encouraged us to step out of the building briefly. Fresh air sounded like an absolute luxury. The restaurant sat a few blocks away. Navigating the sidewalk reminded my body that civility still existed in small, quiet corners of the world. While walking back, a stranger approached slowly. A woman, maybe in her late 50s. Wrinkles framed her smile like lines of resilience earned over decades. She hesitated before speaking to me. "I hope you are truly holding up well," she said gently. "Some of us believe you completely." The simplicity of her voice soothed more than she could have possibly known. I thanked her sincerely, and she nodded once before continuing on her path. The universe always places the right person in your path when faith feels thin. Back upstairs movement near my office door caught my eye. Dad sat in a chair just outside, waiting patiently. Deep creases formed around his mouth, hinting at sleepless nights. He stood when he saw me, clasping his hands, unsure what to do with them. "He is at home now," Dad said softly, "if you can still call it that anymore." "Is he drunk?" I asked. "Just angry," he answered instead, and terrified beyond measure. He said he does not know how to live in a world where he does not look successful to everyone. A world based on truth suffocated his entire life of lies. Dad took a long, heavy breath. I pushed the expectations relentlessly. I wanted a son who could impress other people. Brandon gave me a performance I liked, and I ignored the devastating cost of admission. That failure is entirely on me. His voice cracked slightly. A man who once valued pride above honesty now came undone by his own blindness. "I never asked you to protect me at all," I reminded him. "I simply asked to be clearly seen." He blinked, processing the depth of that request. "You did not deserve any of this emotional damage," he said. "Neither did he deserve the pressure," I replied softly. "Not the constant pressure, not the impossible pedestal." Dad let out a painful exhale. "Maybe we both failed you deeply." Forgiveness was certainly a long road, one we had barely stepped foot on yet. He placed a hand over his chest, almost as if steadying a heart that hurt in new ways. "Let me know how I can meaningfully help you now." Actions defined apologies much better than words. His chance had finally arrived. Evening fell without asking permission. Offices cleared one by one. The building grew steadily quieter. I prepared final documents for tomorrow's hearing. A folder labeled with Brandon's name carried the story he denied everyone else. Financial records, dates, screenshots, his requests begging me not to tell Dad, his demands disguised as desperation. He built his own raging fire. Security insisted on escorting me again. I did not argue against the necessary precaution. The apartment felt significantly less threatening tonight. Strength does that. It shifts how walls feel around you. I checked the deadbolt. The couch embraced exhaustion immediately. My breathing slowed until a knock interrupted the peace. Fear surged momentarily, then paused when I recognized the familiar pattern, 2 quick ones slow. Thomas. I opened the door instantly. He stepped inside carrying a folder. We finally received the report from the platform. They verified he fabricated several key screenshots. They will release a public statement confirming his manipulation. Vindication grew louder with every piece of evidence. Thomas set the folder down gently. "Are you truly ready for tomorrow's hearing?" "Yes," I answered, surprising myself with the certainty that came with it. He observed me for a moment, thoughtful. "You look noticeably different tonight. How so exactly you look like someone who finally stopped apologizing for existing." His words pierced something buried deep inside me. Later, after he left, I stood by the window, watching the street below. Snow kept falling with quiet purpose, covering mistakes from yesterday. Anything could start fresh with enough patience. My phone pinged again. I almost ignored the intrusion. This time the message came from someone I once trusted more than logic itself. Brandon. I recorded the notification before opening anything. Evidence first, accountability next. The voicemail began with silence. A faint, broken breath followed. "I messed up badly," he murmured. His voice dragged like a man defeated by gravity. I do not know why I kept digging once the ground gave out beneath me completely. Not a full apology. Not real accountability. Just pure, unadulterated fear. He continued, each word soaked with bitterness. "You took the spotlight I desperately needed. If they stop seeing me as successful, what exactly am I supposed to be now? A fragile identity collapsing, always makes the loudest, most painful sound. You intentionally turn Dad against me. You want to watch me slowly drown. Self-pity remained the final refuge for those who stubbornly refused to grow. The message cut off abruptly. I replayed it once, not out of concern for him, but purely out of documentation. He blamed me for simply holding up a mirror. Responsibility always feels like an attack to those who worship illusions. Night deepened around me. I curled into bedsheets cool against my skin. For the first time in weeks, sleep arrived without a desperate fight. Control had definitely shifted now. Brandon no longer dominated the shadows of my mind. He was the one sinking. I would face tomorrow with evidence and unwavering resolve. Everything he feared would become everything he could not escape. His downfall was not my revenge at all. His downfall was entirely his own making. I would no longer carry the crushing weight of his choices. Courtrooms always felt oppressively quiet, yet the silence inside this one carried a weight that pressed against bone. The judge had not yet entered, though anticipation already tightened every breath I took. Rows of benches filled with observers who pretended not to stare openly. Their curiosity circled like vultures waiting for movement. Across the aisle, Brandon slouched low next to his lawyer. Shadows clung to the creases beneath his eyes. He aggressively avoided looking at me. Cowardice had completely replaced the arrogance he once flaunted like armor. Thomas sat solidly at my side. His calm, steady presence kept my hands from shaking. Lisa organized documents at the table in front of us, each piece of paper like a brick in the wall protecting my name. A bailiff stepped forward, his voice echoing, "All rise." The judge took her seat. Authority flowed through the room instantly. Everyone settled again quickly, though no one truly relaxed at all. Brandon's attorney stood first. He smoothly wove weak excuses into polished sentences. According to him, Brandon was not malicious. My brother was emotionally overwhelmed, financially distressed, and acting purely out of desperation. Every phrasing attempted to turn personal responsibility into deep sympathy. None of his words addressed the documented harm caused. Lisa rose next. Her gaze didn't waver for a second. "The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates targeted harassment and stalking," she stated firmly. She laid out screenshots, messages, and transcripts like cards in a winning hand. Brandon flinched visibly at each display. His lies looked significantly uglier once the entire room saw them without his narration. The judge's attention remained sharp and focused. She reviewed every detail with measured clinical control. Lisa concluded with a single line that echoed sharply through the chamber. "Truth requires absolutely no disguise." No dramatic pause followed her statement. She simply sat down. The judge gestured toward me. "Miss Hale, would you like to speak to the court?" Voice steady and clear. I stood up. The room sharpened into laser focus, leaving nothing but my purpose. My brother asked me repeatedly for financial help. I began. I gave it freely and without complaint. I asked only for simple honesty in return. When I stopped supporting him financially, he tried to destroy my character instead of accepting accountability for his life. My heart raced quickly. The words flowed clean and strong. He told the world I was cruel. He told strangers I abused power over him. He chose documented lies because the simple truth frightened him. I will not apologize for my hard-earned success. I will not absorb blame for choices only he made. No theatrics were needed. No tears were offered. My statement was clear and complete. The judge gestured for me to sit down. Brandon finally faced me, hostility flickering in his stare. Fear wrestled visibly with rage behind his eyes. Neither won the internal battle. After brief deliberation, the ruling came swiftly and decisively. The judge's voice carried the authority Brandon had spent his whole life trying to imitate. The temporary restraining order stands permanently. Any further violation will result in immediate jail time without delay. She paused, locking eyes with him directly. Additionally, the court orders the immediate removal of all posted false statements. Continued defamation will face severe civil penalties. Each sentence felt like justice learning to walk again after a long delay. Brandon's mouth dropped open instantly. His lawyer touched his arm quickly to silence whatever explosion threatened to escape him. The judge continued her remarks. I strongly advise you, Mr. Hale, to take this opportunity to genuinely reflect. Proceedings officially ended. Chairs scraped loudly. Conversations resumed in low murmurs. Brandon remained completely still, utterly stunned. His manufactured world stopped pretending to exist. I walked deliberately toward the exit without looking back at him. Not even once. Outside the courthouse, the cold air greeted me like a baptism. Snow fell in soft flakes, each one disappearing before reaching the sidewalk. Reporters had gathered microphones, poised like weapons instructed to strike. Questions flew rapidly around me, but security created ample space to move. Silence remained my choice. Truth had already spoken fully for me inside that room. Cameras flashed continuously until the SUV door shut firmly. The world outside blurred beyond the tinted windows. Thomas exhaled deeply relief, visible through his relaxed posture. "You handled that entire spectacle better than anyone could have." "I simply said what needed to be said legally," I replied. "Plenty of people would have screamed incoherently," he said with a faint smile. "Screaming only gives them more noise to twist into drama." He nodded in agreement. "You chose dignity instead. Dignity is always louder and more impactful." Back at the office, applause broke through the lobby when the doors opened. Dozens of employees stood waiting for me. They clapped not for victory over Brandon, but for the truth reclaiming its rightful place. Warmth flushed quickly through me. Gratitude replaced the exhaustion that had dominated my days. Colleagues surrounded us briefly, offering sincere congratulations. When the crowd cleared, my team returned to their work. My presence reminded them that our mission continued successfully beyond the immediate crisis. Inside my office, sunlight highlighted the framed achievements that once received no recognition from my family. Today, they symbolized resilience rather than mere external validation. I placed the court documents inside a secure drawer. Evidence had finished its crucial role. Lisa entered quietly. "We move next to the civil case proceeding," she said. "His actions cost the business real money. His lies created measurable damage. Compensation is absolutely justified now." Money felt trivial compared to peace of mind. Still, accountability took many necessary forms. "I want this entire matter to end soon," I said. "But I want the final end to teach him something truly real and lasting. We will strategically pursue exactly that outcome," Lisa replied confidently. Hours passed faster now. Meetings resumed. Productivity quickly returned to normal. By the time darkness claimed the sky, work felt like renewed purpose again, instead of a temporary distraction. Security accompanied me home once more. The journey appeared calmer tonight. Threats had less room to breathe freely when consequences followed close behind. In the apartment, I set my bag down and took a deeper breath than I had in weeks. The simplicity of unlocking my own door without bracing for imminent danger brought surprising, profound relief. I poured water and leaned against the counter, letting the glass cool my palms. The phone chimed one new message notification. I glanced toward it, bracing myself for bile. Instead, shock softened everything. "Dad, proud of you today." 3 words, unevenly typed, imperfect, healing. A reply formed slower in my mind, careful in its required sincerity. "Thank you." Small, genuine steps repaired long, damaged distances. Later, while preparing for bed, I stood by the window again. Snow drifted over streetlights in swirling ribbons. Peace refused to hurry its arrival, but approached with measured, steady steps. Brandon still existed somewhere inside this large city. His anger still burned violently. His fear still misdirected his aim. None of that threatened me personally anymore. The law stood firmly between us. Truth stood taller than either of us could reach. My voice no longer lived in the shadows his lies tried to cast over me. Everything he feared about his exposure became the solid foundation of my freedom. I switched off the lamp. Night folded gently around me. Brandon had indeed fallen completely. I did not push him forcefully. He chased the edge of the cliff himself entirely. I finally stopped running after him to pull him back. Morning sunlight streamed through sheer curtains as if the oppressive darkness of the past weeks had never existed. For the first time in far too long, waking up did not feel like bracing for an attack. Sleep had finally allowed deep restoration instead of mere survival. Today belonged entirely to me. Success could take its rightful space again publicly. Water boiled in the kitchen, filling the space with warmth that reminded me of simpler beginnings long before anyone outside my family knew my name. The steam grounded me, proving the chaos had not destroyed the parts of life that truly mattered. That familiar ritual held a dignity I utterly refused to lose. A quick glance at my phone revealed a surge of messages. Articles from reputable outlets filled the notifications. Headlines highlighted the established truth rather than manufactured spectacle. My name stood proudly beside my actual achievements instead of baseless accusations. A quiet victory moved strongly through my chest. Interviews scheduled days ago now gained a new powerful context. Facts had reclaimed their power. Lies stumbled far behind the relentless pace of truth. I prepared deliberately, selecting a dark blazer that perfectly matched the shift in tone, not to intimidate anyone, but to represent someone who no longer allowed others to dictate her narrative. My reflection returning a steady, unwavering gaze confirmed my readiness. The car waited downstairs. Security kept their distance without being intrusive. Snow crunched under my boots as I crossed to the waiting vehicle. The cold air had never tasted cleaner or fresher. Thomas sat inside laptop, open final notes prepared for the day. His smile greeted me with the kind of solid encouragement that needed no language. "You are the one steering this ship now," he said, watching my expression closely. "I truly do not want this to sound like a victory speech," I answered honestly. "It absolutely will not sound like that," he replied. "Honesty does all the necessary talking for you." The drive to the studio passed large windows filled with holiday decorations. Joy lived in those displays, utterly untouched by someone else's manufactured chaos. My heart welcomed a little of that joy inside. Inside the interview studio, bright lights illuminated every angle with professional intention. A makeup artist expertly brushed away the last signs of sleepless weeks. The host approached with genuine kindness etched into her gestures. "Ava, thank you for coming today," she said warmly. "We truly appreciate your willingness to share your perspective." "My full story does not belong to silence," I answered firmly. The interview began with questions grounded entirely in reality, not cynical provocation. I spoke without trembling at all. Words carried a strong, clear strength sharpened through intense adversity. "My business exists because I fundamentally refuse to accept that women must choose between ambition and independence," I said. "Support should always uplift others, not be used to create control over them." The host leaned closer to listen. "You built your success entirely privately. Why did you choose to stay quiet about it for so long?" "I allowed my hard work to speak for itself." Initially, I explained. Validation from people who continually refused to see me was never truly necessary for my success. Her next question held deeper personal weight. "What about your brother Brandon?" A difficult moment stretched between us. The cameras waited patiently. "He struggled deeply," I said carefully. Instead of asking for genuine help, he created pervasive illusions about his life. When those illusions inevitably collapsed, he tried to take me down with them. Pain can twist love when fear aggressively guides all the decisions. "What does true healing look like for you now?" "Healing means acknowledging the harm caused," I said. "Not excusing it away, not hiding it from the world, just accepting the difficult truth and moving forward decisively." Warmth spread across the host's expression. "You are fundamentally redefining what it means to rise above." No triumphant music accompanied the end of the segment. No applause chased external validation. Just a quiet certainty that the world had finally listened to my side. Outside the studio, press waited again. Their cameras captured a story that had been transformed entirely. Microphones reached toward me with questions of hope rather than suspicion. My silence became a conscious selection, not an act of avoidance. Thomas shielded space as we reached the car. The door shut firmly behind us, separating the outside noise from my inner clarity. "Your voice carried significant weight today," he said. "That's because the truth stood entirely uninterrupted," I replied. "You are leading more than just a company now," he added thoughtfully. "You are leading people who have been underestimated their whole lives." Purpose replaced the lingering pain. Leadership did not begin with a title. It began when people realized their unique story truly mattered. Back at the office, a new kind of celebration unfolded spontaneously. No champagne was needed, no banners were displayed. Just quiet, powerful pride radiated. Employees approached with words of sincere admiration, not for the publicity, but for my perseverance. Their loyalty mirrored back everything I had fought so hard for. Lena appeared with a stack of letters delivered from customers. Notes thanked me for empowering women to explore the outdoors with gear they could trust completely. My efforts stretched farther than just business. They enabled people to feel truly capable in a world that rarely welcomed that feeling. Each letter felt like a strong hand pulling me farther away from Brandon's shadow. Later, Dad called. His voice carried a blend of humility and new resolve. "I watched you on television today," he said simply. "And what did you take away?" "I realized exactly how wrong I was about you," he admitted. "You did not become successful to prove anything to me, Ava. You built a life that made perfect sense to you. I completely failed to honor that fundamental choice." Honesty felt like warmth, spreading across long-held cold memories. "I am actively learning now," he continued. "Even at my age, I am learning. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me for the years I refused to truly see you. Forgiveness had always been possible for me. Acceptance simply needed necessary time." "I am sincerely glad you are finally trying," I said. "That is absolutely all I can do now," he whispered. Redemption grew slowly and surely. He had taken his first real step forward. Evening painted the city in deep blues and quiet ambitions. My office lights still burned brightly when most others had gone home. Productivity replaced panic entirely. Work held a purpose deeper than mere response to crisis. While organizing files, movement at the door drew my attention. Thomas entered, leaning slightly against the frame, unsure whether to interrupt my focus. "Dinner?" he asked gently. "Food sounds like a reasonable celebration," I said. A subtle relief softened his stance immediately. The ease that now existed between us felt like another milestone earned. We walked to a small restaurant near the office, the kind of place where strangers shared nods and conversations smelled like pure comfort. Soft music floated over the tables. Candles flickered gently. My shoulders finally released tension I had completely forgotten I carried. During the meal, Thomas did not mention the court, the press, or Brandon at all. We discussed future projects, travel destinations we dreamed of exploring, and the kind of peace we wished for people who had endured too much hardship. His laughter surfaced occasionally, rich and wonderfully steady. Mine followed, more gently, but genuinely present. Not once did fear join us at the table that night. Afterward, the night air wrapped around us, like a reminder that life continued successfully beyond mere survival. A gradual, profound shift took place inside me. Safety was not a distant hope now. It was a presence I could fully trust. Outside my building, the snow fell slower than usual, like feathers drifting from hidden wings. Thomas paused before saying goodnight. A quiet moment hovered between us. "You are noticeably different now," he said softly. "I feel fundamentally different. You are truly free, Ava." The word resonated deeper than anything I heard that entire day. Freedom was not the absence of threat. It was reclaiming total ownership of one's own narrative. He wished me good night, then headed toward his car. I watched until he turned the corner completely. That walk out of view felt symbolic. The future held room for entirely new beginnings, ones built on truth and courage, not fear. Inside the apartment, I locked the door behind me without the usual anxious routine. My heart did not race at all. Shadows did not gain shape or form. Walls no longer felt like a constant battlefield. I stood alone in the quiet, not abandoned, but wonderfully grounded. Brandon's downfall did not define me. My rise defined my future. Everything he tried to take away had returned stronger and more resilient. Someone once told me the truth does not need a large stage. It only needs to stand up. Tonight, it stood taller than ever before. Tomorrow, it would lead the way. I was finally ready to follow wherever it wanted to go. The auditorium held a charged, expectant silence, the kind that vibrates beneath skin and bones. Rows of executives, investors, and analysts filled every seat, eyes locked on the stage where a single microphone waited beneath a wide spotlight. Tonight marked the biggest industry forum of the entire year, an event built for leaders people genuinely believed in. Months ago, no one would have imagined my name leading the program. Yet there it was behind me on a towering screen, Ava Hale, founder and Chief Executive Officer of Ascendant Metrics. The stage felt foreign and wonderfully familiar all at once. I adjusted the lapel of my tailored suit, feeling the fabric steady against my fingertips. No tremor, no hesitation, no trace of the woman who once allowed her value to be measured by a family dinner table. Just breath and clear purpose remained. The host finished my introduction, his genuine excitement spilling into applause that rolled through the room. When he stepped aside, the room immediately shrank to the space between me and the microphone. Every single step forward felt like reclaiming ground that once belonged entirely to crushing doubt. Thank you all very much. I began letting the simple words settle over the audience. When I first started this company, I was told that my vision was wildly unrealistic, too ambitious, too technical for someone like me to achieve. A faint laugh rose from someone near the front, not mocking at all, recognizing a shared experience. My background simply did not fit the expected mold. I worked initially from a small apartment kitchen. I built complex algorithms at that kitchen table. I spent countless nights chasing solutions instead of much-needed sleep. The world outside my window had no idea what powerful creation I was quietly building. Faces leaned closer in the audience, absorbing the personal story behind the charts and forecasts. I was told that financial success must look a specific way, shiny, loud, always dressed in expensive status symbols. I believed that external lie once too. My breath left in a controlled exhale. It turns out appearances only tell the smallest part of the real truth. Applause flickered again, brief but strong enough to hold my focus. I stand here tonight not because I fought harder than absolutely everyone else, I continued, but because I absolutely refused to shrink when others tried to decisively determine who I was allowed to be. The audience responded with a wave of approval, my voice resonating powerfully through the space and landing gently in places that genuinely mattered to them. In the second row, my parents listened intently, still focused. Dad rested his hands together, leaning forward like he feared missing a single word. Mom's expression was soft, her eyes shining clearly under the bright lights. None of us mentioned the intense storm that nearly sank us completely. Pain had already carved its lesson into memory. I closed the speech with a quiet, powerful promise. The very best ideas rarely arrive, dressed in what others confidently expect. Greatness grows only from fierce conviction, not from constant external validation. Ascendant Metrics will continue forward because we strongly believe in what we build, and we utterly trust the value of staying true to our path. Thank you all for believing in this difficult journey. Clapping erupted like a sudden ignition. Cameras flashed brightly. Everyone in the room rose immediately. The ovation carried a warmth that wrapped around me with undeniable earned force. It felt entirely earned. It felt truly real. Backstage offered a gentle, sudden darkness after the intense heat of the spotlight. For a moment, I stood completely alone, inhaling the absolute quiet. Triumph simply breathed. Dad approached me first. His steps were slow and careful. "You absolutely commanded the entire room, Ava," he said, his voice low. "I severely misjudged you. I misjudged everything important." He swallowed hard, carrying both shame and pride in equal measure now. "You deserve support long before tonight. No lecture was offered, no comparison was made, just pure, powerful recognition. Seeing me now is genuinely enough," I replied. "The rest of our relationship can take its necessary time." He nodded slowly, accepting that the future would rebuild differently from the fractured past. Mom slipped her hand into mine, a soft gesture with stronger meaning than any apology could ever hold. "I am truly grateful for this," she said, "not primarily for success, but for your immense courage." The compliment anchored itself somewhere deep inside, completely replacing a wound that once refused to heal. A figure lingered near the exit, Brandon. Not the polished, perfect man he liked to pretend he was. His clothes were wrinkled, his shoulders curved inward defensively. The confident smirk was permanently gone from his face. He stopped a few feet away, unable to lift his gaze toward mine at first. "I was incredibly selfish, Ava," he confessed, barely audible. "I lied constantly. I hurt you deeply. I tried to destroy the one person who actually helped me when I had nothing left." No defense was offered. No blame was assigned. He looked up, his eyes utterly unguarded. "I want to finally become someone I do not have to perpetually pretend to be. That huge change will take a very long time. I know I cannot possibly ask for your forgiveness now. Personal growth does not need a public audience," I said gently. "Start quietly. Stick relentlessly with it." A slow nod answered me. Gratitude threaded visibly with remorse. He stepped back immediately, allowing the space to stay sacred, rather than forcing a moment neither of us was truly ready for yet. I left the backstage corridor with Thomas beside me. He offered a reassuring smile without a single unnecessary word spoken. The lobby buzzed loudly with journalists hoping for statements, but security kept them at a respectful distance. As flashbulbs burst through the glass doors, reporters called out questions about triumph, about family, about revenge, hungry to turn my life back into their easy narrative. None of them truly understood that my victory was never about crushing someone else. It was fundamentally about standing fully in who I am. The evening chill greeted me outside fresh, deeply invigorating. City lights shimmered across wet pavement, the world continuing its steady motion, as if welcoming me back into its rhythm. A car rolled to a final stop. The rear door opened, waiting for me. I paused, taking one last look at the building behind me. Inside those walls, thousands of people had watched me own a truth I spent years desperately hiding. I thought of the girl who once stayed quiet to keep the peace at the dinner table, who taught herself to disappear whenever shame entered the room. She had carried me far enough to reach tonight. I no longer needed her silence. Dad stood near the entrance, watching quietly. No pride that demanded credit. No smug expectation. Just a father looking at his daughter with the respect she had profoundly earned. Maybe for the very first time, he really saw me clearly. The city felt wide open now, filled with countless doors I had not yet touched. "Ready to go?" Thomas asked. "Finally, ready," I said. The car moved forward smoothly, gliding through the glow of streetlights. I leaned back, letting the profound moment settle deeply into memory. No bitterness held on to me. No fear tracked my steps in the snow. The future stretched ahead, powerfully urging me onward with a steady, quiet pulse. Truth had reclaimed its ultimate place. Dignity had returned home permanently. I would carry both of these hard-won elements with me into every room I entered from here on. I will walk toward what matters without ever folding myself back into smaller, convenient shapes. I am done giving anyone permission to decide how far I am allowed to go. My life belongs entirely to me now, and every step ahead will reflect that undeniable truth completely. A new chapter waited patiently, unwritten and unstoppable.